Let's cut straight to the point and address the seismic shockwave that just rocked the entire dinar community. If you're holding Iraqi dinar right now, you need to understand that Chase Bank's sudden and decisive restriction on transactions is not an isolated event or a simple policy tweak. It is a direct, calculated response to a massive geopolitical and regulatory firestorm that has been brewing for months. A storm that now threatens to trap countless investors on the wrong side of a closing financial gate. The official story you'll hear is that this is about compliance and de-risking, but the real, untold story is far more sinister and reveals a brutal truth about the future of the IQD. This move is a direct consequence of the United States government launching an unprecedented financial crackdown on Iraq, a strategic maneuver designed to sever illicit financial channels and counter foreign influence, specifically from Iran, which has long used the Iraqi banking system as a backdoor to access the global dollar system. The Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury have been systematically blacklisting Iraqi banks, effectively cutting them off from the lifeblood of the U.S. dollar. And this isn't just a warning shot. It's a full-scale financial siege. Now, here's the critical twist that changes everything. Chase Bank isn't just being cautious. They are actively running for cover, preemptively shielding their trillion-dollar empire from the catastrophic regulatory fines and reputational annihilation that come with handling a currency now deemed radioactive by international standards. They've looked at the mountain of evidence, the rampant money laundering, the sanctions evasion, the sheer opacity of transactions, and made a cold, hard calculation. The profit from facilitating dinar exchanges is microscopic compared to the billion-dollar penalty they could face from one wrong move. This is the moment the illusion of the dinar as an easily tradable international currency shatters into a million pieces. Think about it with brutal honesty. If you cannot walk into a pillar of the Western financial system like JP Morgan Chase and convert your currency, what is its practical, liquid value in the real world? The answer is terrifyingly simple. Its value is now confined to a shadowy, unregulated secondary market dominated by online dealers who are free to set their own buy and sell prices with zero transparency, creating a dangerous environment where you, the investor, have absolutely no protection and are completely at their mercy. The Central Bank of Iraq has even admitted there are no official exchange locations outside its borders, a statement that should send a chill down the spine of every single person holding this currency abroad. This creates a perfect storm where the hype-driven price you see on dealer websites has no connection to the reality of the banking world's willingness to accept it. Chase's action is a deafening vote of no confidence, a signal to the entire global banking community that the Iraqi dinar, in its current form, is too toxic to touch. This isn't a temporary glitch. It's a permanent recalibration of risk. The gateway that many assumed would be open when the so-called revaluation happened is now being welded shut from the inside, and it exposes the foundational flaw in the entire dinar investment narrative. The assumption that the Western financial infrastructure would ever willingly onboard a currency from a nation plagued by such profound instability and financial opacity. The message from the highest levels of international finance is now crystal clear. The path to a legitimate, globally recognized currency is a marathon, not a sprint, and major Western banks are no longer willing to be the finish line. They have pulled out of the race entirely, leaving holders in a precarious limbo, holding an asset that is becoming increasingly difficult to monetize through legitimate channels. And that is a reality you must confront head-on right now. Let's now shatter the biggest and most dangerous fantasy being sold to the dinar community, the intoxicating myth of the overnight revaluation that will transform every investor into an instant millionaire. The recent restrictions by Chase Bank are not an isolated obstacle. They are a screaming red flag, a direct reflection of the brutal economic realities that make such a revaluation a statistical impossibility, and it's time we confront the data that the hype machines desperately want you to ignore. The constant, fever-pitched online speculation about an imminent, massive upward spike in the dinar's value is not just optimistic thinking. It is a fundamental and deliberate misrepresentation of Iraq's actual economic strategy and the grim warnings from international financial bodies. Here is the critical twist that changes everything. The Central Bank of Iraq is indeed working on a major currency project, but it is a redenomination, not a revaluation, and confusing these two terms is the key to the scam that has ensnared thousands. A redenomination is a technical, administrative process designed to simplify a currency, often by removing zeros from the banknotes. Imagine 1,000 IQD becoming one new IQD, with all prices and salaries adjusting downward exactly in proportion. This process, as outlined by the central bank governor Ali Al-Malik, is a long-term plan for economic modernization and efficiency, a logistical necessity for a country dealing with cumbersome currency notes, not a magical event that creates wealth or increases the international value of your holdings. The dream of a single dinar suddenly being worth multiple dollars is a dangerous and financially devastating illusion, one that is deliberately perpetuated by unscrupulous dealers who profit from selling this pipe dream to hopeful investors. The economic fundamentals further demolish this fantasy. Iraq's economy remains perilously reliant on a single commodity, with oil accounting for over 99% of its exports and nearly half of its entire GDP, a textbook case of a fragile, undiversified economy that is wildly vulnerable to global price swings, not the kind of stable, growing economy that supports a miraculous currency appreciation. This single-factor dependency is why institutions like the International Monetary Fund consistently emphasize that Iraq needs deep structural reforms, fiscal discipline, and a move away from oil before its currency can experience any genuine, sustained strength. The IMF's own base case prediction for the dinar's trajectory is one of managed stability, not meteoric rise, with a high probability that the currency will remain pegged within a controlled range against the dollar, a far cry from the thousand-fold increases promised in online forums. The recent volatility and the breach of key psychological levels, like the rupee hitting 89.61, are symptoms of this underlying fragility, driven by a stronger U.S. dollar, foreign investors pulling billions out of emerging markets, and persistent domestic issues like a widening trade deficit. Chase Bank's decisive policy shift is a cold, hard, institutional judgment on these very risks. They have analyzed the same set of data: the political instability, the fragile economic structure, the unlikelihood of a monetary miracle, and the high regulatory risks, and have made a calculated decision that holding and exchanging the Iraqi dinar is a liability they are no longer willing to bear on their books. They are, in effect, reading the authentic economic headlines from the ground and pulling out, a move that should tell you everything you need to know about the difference between internet hype and institutional financial analysis. The message from the cold, numbers-driven world of international high finance is now unequivocal. The path to a legitimate, globally recognized currency is a marathon of reform and stability, not a lottery ticket, and the world's major financial institutions are no longer willing to pretend otherwise, leaving those who cling to the revaluation myth holding an asset that is becoming increasingly difficult to convert, and whose foundational narrative has been systematically dismantled by policy and reality. So where does this leave you, the dinar holder, in this new reality where traditional banking gateways are slamming shut? The Chase restriction, while shocking, is not a dead end. It is a brutal but necessary forcing function, a moment that demands you shift from a strategy of passive hope to one of active, informed, and strategic movement. The first and most non-negotiable step in this new environment is to fortify your defenses against the escalating threat of scams, because the moment major banks step back, the unregulated online dealers and fraudsters step forward, preying on desperation and confusion with ever more elaborate promises of a guaranteed, imminent revaluation. Remember, The Central Bank of Iraq has been clear that its major project is a redenomination for efficiency, not a wealth-generating revaluation, and these scammers are directly contradicting official policy to sell you a fantasy. You must be aware of the real-world precedent, like the 2018 case where 3 individuals from the sterling currency group were convicted of fraud for their role in a dinar investment scam. This is not a theoretical risk. It is a documented danger that preys on those who don't do their homework. The second step is to look beyond the physical currency and explore legitimate, albeit indirect, avenues to gain exposure to Iraq's genuine economic potential without bearing the immense risk and illiquidity of the dinar itself. Financial experts often suggest that if you truly believe in Iraq's long-term future, you should consider diversified emerging market funds, sovereign bonds, or even equities tied to the crucial Iraqi oil infrastructure, as these are regulated instruments that offer a layer of security and oversight completely absent from the physical currency market. This approach allows you to potentially benefit from the country's growth, driven by its vast oil reserves, which account for over 99% of its exports, without being victimized by the wild volatility and exchange restrictions that plague the dinar. But here is the critical twist and the core of your new strategy. Your investment decisions must no longer be based on YouTube rumors or dealer hype, but on a disciplined, data-driven watch list of Iraq's actual economic indicators. To make truly informed decisions, you need to be monitoring specific, tangible data from reliable sources on a weekly or monthly basis. For instance, you should be tracking the Central Bank of Iraq's forex reserves, which currently stand at approximately $95 billion, as this shows the country's capacity to defend the dinar's value. You must follow the fluctuations in oil exports and OPEC Plus decisions, as this is the absolute lifeblood of the Iraqi economy and directly dictates the government's financial health. Furthermore, you need to pay close attention to the quarterly updates and reviews from the International Monetary Fund, as they track the progress of the critical structural reforms Iraq desperately needs. And you cannot ignore the political developments on the ground, as any instability can cause immediate currency weakness. This data-driven framework is your new compass. It replaces speculative hype with measurable clarity and allows you to make decisions based on Iraq's actual, documented economic progress, not fiction. The Chase Bank restriction, while a dramatic symptom of the underlying issues we've broken down, ultimately serves as a stark dividing line between 2 eras for dinar holders. The era of speculation is over, and the era of strategic, evidence-based planning must begin. Embracing this realistic, disciplined approach is your only way to navigate the uncertain path ahead with your eyes wide open, protecting your capital while positioning yourself to capitalize on genuine, sustainable growth in the region, not just a mythical windfall that the data consistently shows is a dangerous illusion. The banks have made their calculated move based on cold, hard data. Now, it is your imperative to do the same, to become your own most diligent analyst, and to understand that in the high-stakes game of currency markets, the most profitable investment you can ever make is the one in your own financial education and strategic patience. This situation is evolving rapidly, and staying ahead means staying informed. I have a new video coming out that will break down the 5 specific data points you need to track each week to protect your investment. Make sure you don't miss it. Smash the like button if this clarified the real story for you, subscribe to Dinar Inside for the unfiltered analysis, and hit the notification bell so you're the first to get that crucial update. The banks are making their moves. Now it's your turn to get strategic. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What's your biggest concern right now as a dinar holder?